Warning. Pro Tri News is a podcast with different opinions, knowledge, and possibly fake news about triathlon racing. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and some stories may be dramatized for comedic effect. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Pro Tri News. I'm your host, Kyle Glass, joined by the usual cast of Pat Lemieux and Mark Matthews. We're joined today for a special announcement by IRONMAN Group CEO Scott Derue. The announcement obviously is now public with the IRONMAN World Championship moving back to a single day of racing in Kona. Scott, you want to tell us a little bit more?
Sure, Kyle and Pat and Mark, really appreciate, as always, just getting an opportunity to be on the pod and getting to engage with you all. We're really excited. The IRONMAN World Championship is the pinnacle of triathlon. And, in the last year plus, in coming into this community and trying to immerse myself into the community with our athletes, doing a lot of listening, a lot of learning, the most common question that I get is, what is the future of the IRONMAN World Championship? And I think that's a testament to how important it is to our community. The commitment that we made early on in this journey is that the voice of the athlete would be our guiding North Star. And through all of our research, surveys of athletes, pros, age groupers, every region, men, women, every age, as well as all of the data that we've looked at, one thing rings very, very true, and that is a significant majority of our athletes prefer to race in Kona and prefer to race together in Kona. And that is true for men and women. It's true for every age in our population. It's true for pros and age groupers and every region of the world. And so we're really excited to announce today that the IRONMAN World Championship is coming back to its roots with one day of racing in Kona. And we're hopeful that our community is going to be really excited about this announcement.
Yeah, so we'll get into some of the details of how you're going to make it work. But first off, I know you'll have had lots of decisions behind closed doors that you've had to make, but this is potentially your first big public-facing decision that the cohort of triathlon, our listeners, your customers will have seen you make. It's something you clearly haven't rushed into. We got the survey. I know the pro athletes got the survey, etc. How long has this taken you to kind of come to this? Because it's a significant decision.
It is, and we take this decision very seriously, and that's why we did take our time. Our team started collecting data as soon as we made the change back in, what would that have been, 2022, with first in the 2 days in Kona, and then with the split in 23 and then 24. And so we've been collecting data throughout. And then, when I came on board in early 24, we established three principles really early on. First was to be athlete first, the dreams, the aspirations of our athletes, the feedback, that we would listen and give voice to our athlete community. That was one. Two is we wanted to be very data driven. There's no shortage of opinions and ideas for what the IRONMAN World Championship can be or should be. But we wanted to be data driven and as objective as possible. And then third is we wanted to respect the history, the tradition, but also look forward to the future and think about innovation as well. Those were the three principles we laid out, and that guided the journey. And I didn't want to make any decision until I had experienced the World Championship firsthand. And we didn't want to make any decision until we had a robust understanding of our community in terms of their preferences, their behavior. And so we've been really looking at those data throughout the last year plus. And when we were in Nice and Kona last fall, in September and October, began to develop a relationship with the mayor here in Nice, and really developed a strong relationship there. Also began to develop a relationship with the governor of Hawaii. You'll recall that the governor was in Kona for the event. And that was the first time I think the governor has been to the IRONMAN World Championship. And then the mayor, Mayor Roth, but then the new mayor, Mayor Alameda, who's new to that role, but not new to Kona. And so we began conversations back in the fall in terms of what that future could look like, because we wanted to be a very collaborative process with both Kona and Nice, and obviously our team. And so those conversations began in the fall and have continued into to this year. And we feel like we've arrived at a path forward for both the Ironman World Championship and the 70.3 that not only we are very excited about, and hopefully our triathlon community is, but also Kona and Nice, both being very excited about the future.
Cool. And Scott, I was lucky enough to attend both events, the World Championships in Nice last year and the World Championships in Kona. And I remember, just briefly speaking with you in Nice and knowing that and understanding that was your first World Championships that you attended. And then ultimately you were going to get to go to Kona a month later. I was at both those events. It was clear that the age groupers had voted with their feet, right?
Sure.
And was it as clear to you, I guess? And then ultimately, like, I figured that you were waiting to really make a lot of action upon the information that you'd been gathering until you had your feet on the ground in both those locations. But surely things had to start moving and evolving quite quickly after Kona 2024.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I think I remember us talking about this. I can't remember if it was Nice or Kona, where you can read about the Ironman World Championship. You can people can tell you about it, but and it must have been Kona, because that Kona mystique, that Kona magic, until you experience it firsthand, you don't really feel it. And I certainly got that feeling in October. It's also true that, Nice is an iconic destination for sports generally. Yeah. And anyone who races in Nice, the feedback is very clear. They love the experience.
Yep.
Right. And so this isn't about Nice. Nice is worthy of a world championship.
Yep.
Right. Which is the primary reason why the 70.3 being there in 26 and 28, Nice is an iconic destination that is worthy of celebrating the best athletes in the world. It's an honest course. It is difficult, and it brings out the best in everyone. The Kona mystique is real, and I certainly got a good feel for that. And the feedback from the community, no matter how you look at it, I think shines a really bright light on the history and the tradition of Kona, as well as the importance of it to our collective future.
Yeah, I think it's almost frustrating to me, because I've said for a long time that the actual Nice race is a better triathlon in terms of the course. The course is better. It's just more exciting. It's more interesting. It's more picturesque. But I have to just fundamentally agree with the community that there is this, you use the word mystique, I would say there's this legacy, this cultural phenomenon that is Kona. So the first time I went to Nice was 2019. It was Kat's first pro world champs. And I'm really glad there's going to be a maintaining pro race there, because I think a lot of people as well, like we're going to touch on, it's quite a young community triathlon now. Nice used to be the second biggest Ironman in the world. It was massive. It was where all the big names went to. Mark Allen's, everyone went there. How was it? Is it emotionally important or like prestigiously important to keep that there? Or is there contractual issues at play where the city is tied into a scheme, or do can you shed some light on that, or is that crossing a line?
Yeah, no, it's not crossing a line at all. And it was much less about sort of contractual obligations or anything of that sort. When we sat down with Mayor Strassi and his team here, it was really about what is the future of triathlon? What is the future of Ironman in Nice? And how can we leverage our platform in terms of evolving and extending our partnership around World Championship events to grow the sport of triathlon, to really grow Ironman as a community, but really to invest in Nice as a destination. And so it wasn't about contracts. It was really about creating a shared vision for where we want to go together. And that's how this really came about.
Can you share a little bit, Scott, on what you guys learned through the split venue process over the last 3-4 years?
Yeah, Kyle, I appreciate the question. I would say two things at least, and I'm sure there are more. First is something we just talked about, which is how special Kona is to our community, right? And you can see it in, again, no matter how you look at it, the preferences of our athletes, and Pat, to your comment, they vote with their participation and their feet, in some sense. But for me, it's what's really stood out the last year as I've gotten to know our community much better is just the emotional connection that exists to this mythical place. And so that's something I think we've certainly learned. The other thing that we learned, and this is consistent with the feedback from our athletes, pros and age groupers, is that many of our athletes, not all, but the significant majority, want to race together. And that separate locations is often not ideal for families. It's often not ideal for training groups, whether you're pro or age groupers, think tri clubs, where if you have split locations, you're training together, men, women, but now you have to train on different timetables for different locations.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think has always been, or at least the feedback I hear from our community, one of the things that's been really unique about triathlon over the generations is that it is this one ohana, this one community. And not everyone, but many people really value that one ohana and that one community together.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing that came out of the split location format as well.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably also vendors, right? And then your team, and then media. Like those are three things that are also part of the ecosystem that are heavily impacted by the decision.
Yeah, Kyle, you're 100% correct. I mean, we've collected feedback from all of our various partners and vendors that show up at events and things of that sort. And a split location, because none of these places are necessarily cheap to go to, depending on where you are in the world. And it, in some cases, and maybe in many cases, forces them to make a choice.
Yep.
And that's not necessarily great for the sport and great for the brands that we work with. So that was certainly another consideration that played into it as well.
Now, Scott, you've got the real interesting. I always say it's a bit of a quagmire where this race is so tied. Now we're really seeing it, right, to this island. And we know that the relationship with the island has been, there's been some tension at times.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest fear now is that what happens to this brand or this sport if at some point the island says, hey, we actually don't want to race here anymore, right? Because I think, your predecessor, he had with the realities of the slots around Kona, he had asked for a lot of creative solutions with a Thursday, Saturday, a Saturday, a Saturday in September, a Saturday in October. And it seemed that Kona has landed on, we will give you one Saturday in October, make it work. What can you tell us about the current relationship? And then I guess, how can we, and ultimately our listeners, continue to try and really foster a great relationship with that island so we can have it for another 40 years?
Yeah. And Pat, I appreciate you framing it that way, because it is a collective responsibility of all of us. If Ironman shows up and says all the right things and does all the right things, but our athletes, our partners, et cetera, show up and don't respect the island and the community there, that makes it very difficult for us in terms of managing and stewarding that relationship. So, as I noted earlier, spent the last year really trying to invest in, trying to understand, and trying to develop relationships, both with Nice, but also in this case with the Kona community. And, Diana Birch, our Senior Vice President of World Championship Events, lives in Kona. We have a team there in Kona. So we're deeply embedded in the community, very local. But for myself as well, really wanting to develop those relationships and understand the past, the present, but also work collaboratively with the community about what that future holds. And that's where the relationship with the governor, who's actually from Kona, and has worked and lived in Kona, as well as with the mayor and the new mayor who came into office this year, Mayor Alameda, really trying to invest in these relationships to understand how we Ironman and how we, the triathlon community, need to show up when we are on the island to be respectful and to celebrate the local culture and all of that, all that it is and what it means to us. And so they've certainly taught me a lot. And I would describe the relationship with the local Kona community to be very positive and very strong at this point. As you alluded to, the 2-day format is not a viable option. It's simply too disruptive to the local community. And it's not our right to be there. It's our privilege. And so we do have to acknowledge and respect the wishes of the local community. And I think that's really important. But where we are right now is a very positive and healthy relationship.
Yeah, and I want to just support the Ironman side a little bit and again paint a picture for our listeners. It's not feasible it's not realistic to expect Ironman to do a Saturday Sunday or a Thursday Saturday, because you guys effectively have to work a full day. You'd have to work 3 full days because it's a full day before. 4 full days. It's a full day beforehand. It's a full day on race. It's an 18-hour day on race day, and then you'd have to re-rack a bunch of bikes on. It's 4 full days. I mean,
it's not just staff; it's the volunteers as well.
No,
you've got to double up the volunteers as well. It's impossible. And I think Scott was super polite in kind of encouraging athletes to attend. If you're an age group athlete and you've got your 2,000 followers on Instagram, like I do, you do not need to be riding down the Queen K, having a car filming you from the side, disrupting traffic, just acting like a generic arsehole in the community. Like, what I do feel like we as a community, and I've been guilty of it, have this sense of entitlement because it's race week, it's our venue. And I think we've rubbed up the communities in some places the wrong way by acting in those kind of fashions. And that's the sort of behavior we're trying to discourage, and just remember that we voted. And what was the vote percentage, Scott, from the age group community that wanted to go back to Kona?
You mean in terms of the survey that we did?
Yeah, so you did a survey. I mean, we voted on a mass majority wanted to go back, wasn't it? It was a significant majority wanted to go back to Kona.
No, that's exactly right. Yeah,
and so we've made this decision. Now we want to keep it, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So
to answer your question, it was for age groupers. It was 2/3 men prefer 1-day Kona over every other option. And approximately 60%, if I remember correctly, high 50s, 58, 59% of women prefer that 1 day of Kona over all other options.
And some of the other options did include, like, you graciously put on there 2 days Kona, even though it was not necessarily viable. There were split options. That's not the percentage. If you offered them Kona or something else, would have been even higher, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the 2-day Kona option, even though it's not viable, we offered it because we wanted a baseline relative to that. So that was the highest preferred option among age groupers and pros. The 1-day option was right behind it.
Yeah.
Every other option was a far distant, right? Yeah. And so we feel very confident that the voice of the athlete here, again, no matter how you look at cohorts and different age groups, et cetera, that the voice of the athlete, again, is our North Star. And I think, hopefully people see that we're living up to that commitment that we made, is that we'll listen and put the athlete first.
So now you've done that, is it safe to say that you inherited a bad decision? Was that not just a bad decision to split in the first place?
Sorry, Scott. No. You can. I wanted to help him out a little bit here.
No, we don't need to help him out. Otherwise, this is a puff piece.
That's fine.
Yeah. No. But Pat, I appreciate the support and feel free to chime in. But Mark, I don't think so. And the reason is there were 2 reasons for splitting the races. The first is we had a tremendous amount of deferrals from COVID. And so we had thousands of athletes that had deferred. And we were able to split the race in 22 in Kona. For all the reasons that we know, not a viable option. But we had started planning for 2 days in Kona because we, as you know, we start planning a year in advance and start qualifying. And then we discovered that it wasn't going to work for the community.
So you have qualified athletes on abundance.
Exactly. So we've got qualified athletes, and you're essentially left with two choices. You can go back to those qualified athletes and say, sorry, right? Or you can find another alternative.
Right. And
that alternative, if other location outside of Kona, it's Nice.
Yeah.
Right.
Fair.
And so I think that was a big part of it. The other part was, in our efforts to grow the sport and grow women participation in the sport, we had a hypothesis that split races might help achieve that goal. And so we wanted to, in some ways, test that and see if it would help us growing the community overall and growing women participation in the sport. And that was another important consideration. And so, it's always easy to sit here in hindsight and say coulda, shoulda, woulda. But I think given the circumstances at the time, it was the right decision. And now, times have changed, and we've learned a lot. All those deferrals have worked their way through, or almost all of them. And so those are gone. And we've done an extensive amount of research around what's going to help grow the community, grow the sport, and grow women participation in the sport. And a big part of that we've learned is that it's less about focusing on the pinnacle of the sport, the World Championship, and more about focusing on the entry points into the sport and inspiring women to come into the sport, as opposed to aiming for that World Championship, which, as you all know, new triathletes to the sport, generally, that's not their motivation, at least initially. So that would be, Pat, how'd I do?
No, that was great. And I think, if we go back in time, we were all really excited about the decision that Andrew had to make, right? We understood the rigors that he was under. I think we all wanted to believe that the split would work, that we could wean the audience off of Kona. And, we were about a year and a half in, especially this year, we just realized that, hey, look, it's actually impossible. Kona is just way too, got way too much aura around it. The split's not going to work. But I think all of us were incredibly optimistic about it. And it's not that, and we don't fault or blame Andrew for any of the decisions that were made. And I think we're sit there and go, okay, now we know, we know now, and I think everybody's a lot more confident in their decision-making going forward.
Yeah, I think so. I think the real failing of the split was, ironically, the split of men and women. It wasn't. I don't think the biggest failing was the failing of location. I actually think it was dividing the community and those couples and the brands and everything doing two venues. It gave it this kind of almost, there's a proper world champs every other year, and there's the secondary world champs that your partner or half your triathlon club might get to go to. Ironically, I actually don't think, from what I felt, it was the lack of Kona. I think it was the lack of combination.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I mean, we've tried to listen to all different perspectives, and there are many people, Mark, that would agree with you. There are also, a number of people that would see it differently, in that there are people that still believe that, women having their own day is good for the sport and good for women in the sport. And we're just not seeing that, both in the preferences of women, as well as what we're seeing in terms of who's coming into the sport, and who's leaving the sport. And so we've learned a lot, in terms of what's going to help us grow the community, grow the sport, including women participation in the sport. And I'm optimistic about what's to come for our community.
Scott, obviously this is a two-part announcement with both the IRONMAN World Championship going to single day racing, and then also 70.3 World Championship in Nice. But something that we kind of do want a little bit more information on is the quota for Kona, right? So I believe you're going to be around 3,000 athletes for the single day of racing. Is that going to be split as far as like men are getting, I'm not going to say men are going to get more than women, but
50/50?
like,
Is it
is it 50-50? Like, how is it?
Sure. So what we've announced right now is that nearly 3,000. The number around Kona has been roughly around 2,500. I'm just talking sort of broad numbers. We think for 2026, it's between 2,500 and 3,000. Sitting here today, is that 2,700? Is it 2,800? Is it 2,900? Don't know yet. We're still working out and finalizing those details. But we think it's in between those two numbers. The principle behind the slot allocation. So because we don't know the specific number, we're not ready to say exactly how many qualifying slots go this way, that way, that side, that type of thing. The principle behind it will be mostly proportionate. And we actually asked the community, both men and women, proportionate, equal, and the community among men preferred strongly proportionate.
Obviously.
Not surprising.
Because
right?
Just before, I think it will help, Scott. What are you finding at the moment is the proportion of male to female at your average full distance Ironman event?
It's about 20-80. About 20% women, 80% men. Goes up to about 26% for 70.3 women, and the remainder being men.
Sorry, I just thought that was important to know.
Yeah, no, it's important context for sure.
Yeah.
And so, but we asked the community, and not surprising, men generally prefer, or strongly prefer rather, proportionate. Women, interestingly, were split equal, 50-50. In terms of whether or not it should be proportionate or equal. We could come up with a whole range of hypotheses for why that might be. But it's not as if men wanted proportionate and women universally wanted equal. That's not the case. So the reason that I say mostly proportionate is, and this is consistent with history, both in sort of the one-day editions as well as two-day editions, is we have programmatic initiatives like our legacy program, like our Women for Tri program, that we very strategically invest in to help grow the sport and grow the community and create accessibility into the World Championships. And we'll continue to do that, and in some cases grow those programs. And so that's why I say mostly proportionate, is those programmatic initiatives make it not perfectly proportionate.
So that's interesting. So what you're saying is you're basically trying to allow qualification. It is equally as hard no matter what age category or what gender you are. So male or female or age is based on you have to beat the same percentage of people to qualify, roughly. But then you can balance it out a bit more with equal representation, utilizing the other avenues to kind of push slightly more women to the World Championships than they are proportionally represented at across the other races by using those other programs.
As one example, that's right.
Do you expect to catch flack for that? Because I can't help but feel you will catch some social media flack for, it's not equal men and women.
There are certainly people that hold that perspective, and so we may, I'm sure we'll hear from them, and that's okay. People can have different and diverse opinions on the topic, but from a principled perspective, we feel like generally proportionate with very strategic investments in the programs that we're talking about here is the right way to invest in the sport in our community long term. Yeah. And as I feel very confident and comfortable with that decision.
Because the hard reality is, if you went equal split, getting to the World Champs as a 30 to 35 or 40 to 45 male would be insanely difficult all of a sudden if they weren't proportionally representative, because they would be fighting a battle that makes it 4 times harder for a man of the same age to qualify than a woman. That's
right. And so that's why I talk about it as equal opportunity as opposed to equal outcome.
Yeah, got it. I actually fully stand by it. I'm completely invested in the women's sport. That's my focus. but to me, that is fair. I don't believe that just by giving an alarmingly higher opportunity for women to make the World Championships, that leads to growth in the women's sport, or else we would have seen that across the last 2 iterations where they had their own World Championships and we were just simply struggling to even fill the slots there.
Yeah, no, that's right. And so, again, can have diverse opinions on it, and that's perfectly okay. And we appreciate that feedback. But hopefully the community understands and sees that we're trying to be as principled as we possibly can be in making these decisions.
So Scott, with us moving back to a single day of racing, obviously that means that the broadcast is going to have to be, I would say, split in a sense, similar to how we currently do it at Ironman Racing and 70.3 Racing, with all of those happening on the same day. In the press release, there is a note in there about innovative broadcasts. I would love to know more about what that means. Is that like a quad box? Is that similar to Formula One, to where you can click into different camera angles, different broadcasts, stuff like that?
Yeah, it's I don't know if it's going to be F1 with yeah, I mean, Mark can tell me whether or not Kat wants like 6 cameras on her bike for different angles and things of that sort. I'm guessing the answer is no.
No.
But we are constantly experimenting, learning, and trying to evolve our approach to the broadcast. And one of the things that we've heard from certainly professional athletes, but also age groupers as well, because they're just fans of the sport, is equal coverage between the men and women's races is really important. And so as we go to a one-day format, we want to make sure that we're committing to that equal coverage, and that requires some innovation and creativity on our part. Now, I say equal coverage, that is subject to the dynamics of the race. It is quite possible in the race, right?
I'm so glad you said that.
Right? I mean, it's quite possible that the women's race is infinitely more exciting than the men's, and we're trying to create a great, compelling viewer experience, and we might gravitate towards the women's race, or vice versa, right? So, but philosophically, from a principle perspective, trying to create equal coverage among men and women. It's also not just the broadcast, right? If you think about the consumption of the sport in terms of media, a lot of it's through social media. A lot of it is through our documentaries. And so we've already begun to evolve our approach to our social content, to our docuseries and so forth, to ensure equal coverage between men and women around our content. Are we perfect at it? I'm sure we're not perfect. Somebody can go count the minutes, but that's the aim. Okay. In terms of the broadcast, we're looking at a range of options, and we've already begun to experiment with these. So new technologies that allow for more split screen type formats. So if you watch the Texas, all three of you we were all at the Texas race. So maybe we were watching it on the broadcast. I think Mark was running on the bike course, just yelling at people, hoping that it's Kat. I don't
think I was running anywhere near her. I could have lasted about 30 seconds. I had a bike on course, Scott. But yeah, your broadcast there that you're alluding to, we saw split screen, and there's a great account which I'm sure you hate most of the time, called 146 point whatever memes, and they did this meme about when Iron Man discovered split screen, and it's like there's a guy losing his mind because we finally saw some split screen action, and it works, right?
It's cool. It's super cool. And so we're experimenting with more split screen. We've I don't know if we'll do this or not, but we've been experimenting with technology that would allow viewers to either watch the combined broadcast or have dedicated channels for the men's race and the women's race. And so you could flip between. Or you could go in, a screen within a screen format like what we have here. There's all different sorts of, permutations of that we're experimenting with. The other thing that we're looking at is we've been experimenting even early this season with some new drone technology. So even though it may not be F1 with different camera angles attached to bikes and tripods are attached to people on the run or whatever the case may be. But some of the work we're doing with drones right now is really interesting. That I think could allow. Actually, my hypothesis: there is a day in the future where we don't need helicopters, because the advancements in this drone technology are moving so fast. But we can get closer to the athletes, different angles than we're able to get otherwise. So there's a number of different technologies and strategies from a broadcast perspective. But ultimately, the goal is to provide a really immersive viewing experience and to ensure equal coverage across all of our content, including but not limited to the broadcast.
I think the one you mentioned there, and I swear this happened in Hawaii in maybe 2021, Kyle, or no? You had the ability to
It was
switch
2022 Kona.
Yeah, you could choose the channel there. It was a one-off broadcast. You could choose the channel, and that was absolutely brilliant. If you can, that's the single biggest thing I think that you would engage the viewers on, is to move towards that. But we kind of touched on this, and we're trying to keep it slightly pro-focused. But I've got to ask about 70.3 Worlds, because that is part of it. That is a big part. It's not just about Kona. So you're kind of honoring this Nice legacy with 26 and 28 in Nice, which means you've still got to announce 27. Now there's plenty of time for that. I'm wondering if you have a venue in mind. Is it Taupo? Because it bloody should be. But if it's not, have you got a 27 venue in mind? Like, or is that going to be are you thinking of like a every other year Nice, and you're going to rotate that middle year to, show some of these cities? What's the thinking behind this spare year you've got right now?
So we have several host cities who are interested in the 70.3 Worlds. Not ready to finalize that and announce where that's going to be, but certainly in the coming months that will be something we do. Philosophically, we really like the rotation.
Yeah.
And so, because people love Nice, racing in Nice, and it's such an iconic world-class city, but as we talked about, an iconic sort of racing destination. We've charted this sort of vision for the future for 26 and 28. There's a mutual option, mutual meaning both parties, Nice and Ironman, have to say yes for 2030. So, that decision would be made closer to 2030, obviously.
Yeah, we got some time.
Yeah, exactly. But the expectation going forward for the 70.3 Worlds would be to continue in this rotating format. But we're really excited, and the city of Nice is really excited about 26 and 28. And we think our athletes are going to love it as well.
So Pro Series, right, is clearly taking off. I will stand by. I know you bat it off slightly, but I know actually, Scott, you admitted that the Pro Series was slightly in response to the T100. And I think it's good to just acknowledge that. But now you've said on our podcast and others that actually you've seen great success from it. So even if the T100 went away, you would continue it because it is creating a draw. And I would say, I don't know if you spoke to people, Scott, in Texas, the amount of people I bumped into that were just there to watch the pro race, they traveled to watch. I have not seen that in recent years.
That's right.
And so the Pro Series is a success. One thing I've said is it would be really iconic if every year it finished in Kona. So the points that the race is decided at the IRONMAN World Champs, which kind of means your 70.3 Worlds has to be in September, which it clearly is for Nice. Is that something is that enough of a swing factor for you to try and prioritize that 70.3 date in September? When we do have to acknowledge that your financial base is the age group race. So if a city can only hold it in November, is that going to be flexible?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a consideration that we've certainly talked about, because I do think it would be really cool to end the Pro Series in Kona. I think that would be really iconic. But obviously, depending on sort of where the 70.3 Worlds is located, September may not make sense, right? Just from a seasonality perspective. And so when it's in Nice, it wouldn't surprise me. We haven't obviously mapped out the 2026 and 2028 seasons for the Pro Series. But as we do, it wouldn't surprise me if Kona was the finale. But we'll see how that plays out. but it's hard to commit to that every year, just not knowing where the venue for the 70.3 Worlds would be. But it's certainly a consideration that we've been throwing around.
So I think we've covered the announcement that you guys made today. I know you've got some pro athletes dropping their thoughts on the feed, which is probably out now. Before I throw some curveballs in before we close out, Scott, is there anything you'd like to add that can help you guys in making this announcement? Or have you
No, I mean, I think we covered it, and I really appreciate all of you and your listeners, and I hope people are really excited about it, and both Kona and Nice, and we are thrilled to make this announcement today, and do it in the way that we've tried to do it, which is that North Star of our athletes and putting them first, and I hope people appreciate that as well.
So in Texas, we were all just there. Great race. I mean, I thought it was pretty flawless. That's becoming one of the kind of iconic triathlons, I think. Ironman Texas feels like it's got a real vibe around it. The woodlands and everything is great.
Yeah.
You had an incident on the bike course, which didn't cause completely unavoidable on your side. I've got to ask you about it because you told me as we crossed the finish line. And I was actually on the plane on the way back just now with a lady that was just behind when she watched a cement truck roll on the Hardy Toll Road right on the bike course, and it almost impaired one of the lanes. How stressful is that for you to kind of your team to deal with at the time, or when did you find out? This isn't a neg. This is just a wild story.
Yeah, sure. No, it is. It is a cement truck coming from the other side of the road was not on the bingo card for options that we had planned for. We planned for every contingency you can possibly imagine, and that was not on the list. So for those,
have you not heard this?
No, I haven't heard this. Explain what happened. I haven't heard this.
Yeah. So for you all in the listeners who may not have seen it or heard about it. So, on the bike course on the highway, we essentially have one side of the highway, and then the other side of the highway is auto traffic, and they're separated by a large concrete barrier,
massive concrete.
Yeah.
Very safe.
And so
you would need a cement truck to get through it.
Yes. And I should lead this story with everybody involved is safe, and thank goodness for that.
Absolutely.
So as best we can tell, we had an Amazon truck, a cement truck, and a car going side by side along the other side of the highway. Don't know why, but somehow the cement truck rolled over, and the car beside it rolled over, and half of it, when it came to rest, the cement truck was on top of the car, and half of that was on the original side of the road, and half of it was on our bike course.
And what time of day did that happen?
Early afternoon, mid-afternoon.
Yeah, the pros
were off.
The pros were long gone.
Yeah.
But there were still age groupers on the bike course, and our team did and I want to give the Ironman team, and obviously I'm biased, but these are the best in the world at doing what they do, and they were able to respond extraordinarily quick with remarkable precision, and were able to get the debris off the road as quickly as possible. And essentially, other than maybe slowing down the athletes for just a minute, we were able to redirect the bike course in real time. So there was no lasting interruption. We were able to get the EMS personnel. Fortunately, as you all know, we overinvest in safety personnel because it's a huge priority for us. And so they were close by. So they were redirected for a moment to go to this incident. So we were able to get them to the accident quickly. And I think one or both drivers of the car and the cement truck had to go to the hospital, but both are okay, and we're very grateful for that. But yeah, it was not on the bingo card, and it was quite stressful for about an hour. But our team did a great job.
the bingo card comments. So Scott told me at the finish line and told me straight away everyone was okay. So you can have a bit of levity in the situation. When he said the bingo card thing, I sort of joked about, if you put a risk assessment together, if you've got someone red teaming or suggesting, things that go wrong. If you hired a guy and he said a cement truck rolls on the course, you'd just sack him. You'd be like, "You're an idiot. This is wild thoughts." And lo and behold, the Ironman team have that. Fair enough. Last one before we move on. You watched some amazing pro racing. We kind of have a pro feel to our show. In fact, that's all we really talk about. Are you willing to make any predictions for the season? Have you got any fans? Is Bloomy going to win rampant style, the Ironman Pro Series? How good is it to have the Norwegians here? Like, you're clearly a bit of a fan of the pro racing now. What are your any personal takeaways, athletes you liking, stuff like that?
I love the pro racing. It's super exciting. And the quality and depth of the field, both on the men's side as well as the women's side, is just extraordinarily deep right now. And so I find it really, really exciting and a lot of fun to watch. And just the opportunity to get to know a lot of the athletes as well and develop relationships and understand their stories. I find that there are so many compelling characters in the pro field that I think it's a real opportunity for us to shine a light on these incredible athletes, but also just these extraordinary humans. And it's a platform for us to inspire people to come into the sport. I mean, as you said, people coming to Ironman Texas to watch the pro series and the pro race. Like, that generally doesn't happen where people are traveling in. Maybe, they come out of their house or whatnot, but that is something that's, at least what people are telling me, relatively new to the sport.
Definitely.
You guys were at the pro panel. It's standing room only.
I forgot to mention this on our wrap-up show. So I was in there. Obviously, Kat's won 3 in a row now. So the first year we were here, I reckon that pro press panel had 15 people in the room. Last year there were maybe 100. This year there were 250, and you couldn't get into the room. It's just such a good indicator of a growth in that area I wasn't expecting.
Exactly. The race I was at before Texas in Oceanside, same thing.
It's amazing,
right? And so we, pro racing generally, certainly the Ironman Pro Series, has just become an incredible platform for the athletes and for Ironman to engage our community in new and different ways and shine a light on just these incredible athletes. And we just see it as a platform to grow the sport and engage our community. And it's certainly become that really quickly.
One last question before I let Pat close out. Are you seeing any correlation between signing up for races and them being Pro Series races? Are people more interested in signing up for Pro Series races as an age grouper?
There are signals that is the case. It's not universal across every Pro Series event. So we're trying to tease apart why is it true for some but not others. But there are signals that is the case. And one hypothesis is that it gives us and others like you all something really compelling to talk about. Right? And so now Ironman Texas has an aura around it that maybe it wouldn't have had otherwise. And now we can have the best athletes in the world chasing titles at Ironman Texas. And now we're able to talk about how cool the Ironman Texas experience is in a way that's inspiring for the age group athletes. And so that's my hypothesis. Is why we're
secondary marketing sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, if you told me I could, go play basketball on the court with LeBron, like, I'd be there. And that's what we have. Right. So,
Scott, what an exciting announcement. What an exciting day. I think this is something, one day racing back in Kona, something that we're all really happy to see. This is a huge decision for you. And I would say, kind of like Mark said at the beginning, this is your first real public facing decision. So we want to, thank you for that. I think it's really important to recognize the work that you've done the last year. In my work that I have, it's really striking and apparent to me that brands have taken notice of how switched on Ironman has become in this last 18 months. the evolution that you guys have done with your own social media, with realizing that the pro athletes are huge advocates and ultimately your cheapest marketers for your product. You guys have really leaned into that. You guys have become, even just with media access for a group of guys like ProTri News, we've been able to be crusaders for the sport. So I think it's important to recognize, that you walked into what seemed to be a really successful business, and so far you've taken it up and to the right. And so I think we're all really excited and eager to see what's next. So thanks for that.
Well, Pat, I really appreciate that. And you all know this, but it's a team effort. And the Ironman team cares deeply and is really talented. But it's also a community effort. And it's folks like yourselves and all of our various partners and other media outlets. We're all in this to see triathlon be successful. And we all have a role to play. And so I appreciate what you all do and what many others do to help us grow the community and grow the sport. Because I think I've learned really quickly that the sport of the triathlon is an incredible sport, and the community around it is among the most passionate I've ever seen. And that makes it really special. So I appreciate that.
Cool. Thank you, Scott.
We're going to hang out for a little bit longer and kind of debrief the conversation that happened. But yeah, thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
Did Kyle pause this?
Here we go.
Here we go.
Oh, thank God he's gone. What an awful bloke. The thing is, right, we'll get slammed for it being a puff piece. I have no doubt, especially Pat's wrap up there, where I think the only thing you forgot was to tickle the balls.
No, I mean, but the problem,
he's just what people won't see, age groupers, everyone that gets a little bit angry and wants us to do this. Scott is at the finish line from the first pro to the last age group at every race. He's approachable, he's likable, he talks to people, he listens to the community. It's very hard not to like the guy and the decisions Ironman are making.
I'm gonna interject here and just defend myself for a minute. I have brands calling me saying, "Hey, every dollar that I'm putting into to an Ironman athlete right now goes so far," because they go that athlete's getting coverage on Ironman social media, which they go we couldn't pay for if we were doing social media ad buys. They're like,
yeah,
this is their whole sphere. They're really honing in, and we didn't even talk about some of this athlete experience stuff. It's like the medals that they're giving out, the service on course is getting better. It's they've got pizza for all the athletes afterwards. Like the actual product is allowing them to charge $500, $600, $700 for a race.
I think it's allowing them to justify it a bit more. They definitely got to a point, hadn't they, a few years ago, where they were still charging extremely high prices, but they were penny pinching.
Yeah.
And actually, and Scott talked about in the first podcast we're on, it's amazing that all you really have to do is just keep some of the basics alive and push them. The bit you say there about the pro athletes is interesting, and the exposure. Again, I think we would be remiss not to acknowledge that T100 have forced a bit of this action.
Totally.
Or showed them that,
It is
you
important.
can do a lot with your pros. It is important.
No, I mean, let's not forget. I mean, I remember, Lionel was the first triathlete I ever represented, right? I remember like you would have with Ironman, the days of they did not understand how to work with an athlete in a synergistic way to get the most out of them, and if you go back and look on their Instagram feed from 5-6 years ago, there were no pro athletes visible on it.
No. And now it's mostly pros.
It's all forward facing as pros. So there was this whole, not that long ago, they didn't understand that the pro athletes were their cheapest and most effective marketing tool.
And I also think the pro athletes have learned a bit that their not customer base, but it almost is their customer base is age group athletes, because the brands sponsor the pros because the age groupers then buy the stuff, do the thing, do this. And you see now pros have sort of acknowledged that responsibility, sharing information, sharing insight, trying to make their life interesting.
Yep.
And it's a trickle down feed that now as an age group athlete, I think it's just a more fun sport to be in right now.
Yeah, no. And then there's obviously this whole paradigm shift where globally on a macro scale, being healthy has become cool. And so now events, whether it's a mountain bike event, triathlon, running race, they're naturally getting more people to them.
They're not nerdy anymore, right?
And so
Well, I think it's still pretty nerdy. That's probably maybe a bit generous from it.
I mean, how do we think? I was really happy to hear from Scott that they just proportionally, that's how they're going to give out the slots, right?
Yeah.
And they're gonna have an opportunity for, I would say.
So I've said it publicly, and I've caught some flack for it. I've even had, "Oh, your wife's a pro. Like, how can you say that?" I think Scott's right. I am a fan of. I don't like equal outcome. I like equal opportunity. That's what the world should be. Everyone should have an opportunity to succeed in whatever it is they do, irrespective of whatever minority they have, i.e., are they women, are they whatever it might be. But forcing an equal outcome does not lead to a happy environment. We've seen that socially across so many spectrums. And it's just honestly outright unfair if they went equal. I just think it was literally unfair on our Ironman's largest client base, which is 80%-ish men.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the issue, or the reality is they looked at the numbers across the board. And then, I mean, again, we were in Nice last year. They could not give out slots. In best case scenario, there were 900 women racing in a race that was effectively an open entry race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love for them to look at like lower tier though. Like, is this something that you see like through shorter course racing, even like sprint and Olympic racing?
The shorter you go, the closer to equal numbers there are.
Right.
So half is higher than that, and Olympic distance is slightly higher. Yeah, but I think even at sprint level, because there's a local sprint thing here that we're talking about it, the closest they get is about 30-70 female to male.
Yeah.
And I like Feisty, the podcast closed down. They were vehemently against this. They were 50-50. It has to be 50-50. It's the only way you equal up the sport. But there's no evidence that that's true. You can say it. You can say, I believe having 50-50 would equal the sport. But there's no evidence that that's true. Like, we've had 50-50 prize money forever, since the sport's inception.
And we've had 50-50 slots for about the past 10-ish years.
Yeah, so pros has been 50-50, right? But what's the representation at a pro race? There were 70-odd males and there's 30-odd females. Like, there's no evidence that making it equal leads to equal signing up numbers.
Yeah. What else can we pull from this?
I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't say it to Scott, but I don't know how I feel about Nice having the option to host 70.3 Worlds for the next 3 out of the next 5 years.
I know what you mean.
That's like a little gnarly to me. I feel like if you were in Taupo, like that, easily that would be like a secondary venue if that was my decision. But
despite what he said, and he will obviously say the right thing.
Yeah.
There's got to be some sort of contractual issue there, Pat.
Yeah, they had to honor the agreement for sure for 26. I mean, I'm still curious why they chose to go 26-28 versus just saying, hey, let's just do 26-27.
I think they had to give. I think they needed to get like out of there for a year.
I think as well they do. I think he's right. I do think they want, because I like it. I like that one of the world champs rotates, the other one's set. So maybe they want to keep that feel, and they honor Nice a couple of times, but they still have a rotation.
I don't mind. I mean, obviously, like when we flew to Nice, I mean, it's easy to get to. It's in Europe. The city's lovely. I'm going there every other year for 70.3 Worlds. Like I mean, why not?
I don't hate it. And it's not puff and nonsense to say there is a massive heritage of triathlon in Nice.
Yeah, that's fair.
There is huge, and the course is excellent, and the town is perfect for it. And it's different to Kona as well. One is a small town, closed community feel. One is a big European city, bustly.
Yeah, I mean, I just think too, like Mark, when we went out to dinner after Nice last year, it's like, dude, you got a table immediately. Dinner for 5 of us or whatever was like $100. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like life in Nice for the race is really, really easy.
I don't dislike it. I am with Carl though. I like the idea that it rotates. So if they had announced the 70.3 World Champs is now Nice permanently, this would be a different conversation.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. Can we talk about how on episode 203, the 70.3 World Champs debrief, I kind of called this?
You did. You said exactly this was what
I mean, that didn't come as a huge surprise to me. Again, if you were in Nice last year for the women's race, and you understood that Ironman was losing, it was reported at over $1 million on OPEX loss. You knew that it was going to end there. Like you knew, okay, this is the final year we're doing the split. Like they had to roll out of this at some point.
100%.
So I don't know. It was really interesting. I think.
Honestly, I'm going to say it. If women had turned up en masse, signed up, gone and raced the world champs when it was an open offer, and they'd filled that race to 2,500, we would probably still have a split.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
Right.
So I would say it's probably not fair to then complain that the races merged and the women don't have their own race, because that opportunity was there. Yeah. And it was in Kona, it wasn't taken up. They didn't even fill Kona. They didn't fill Nice. There was the opportunity there, and it wasn't taken. You can't expect a business, because we pretend, like they are very good. They are very athlete focused. I think he's sincere when he says those things. But it is a business for profit. They can't be expected just to make loss year after year, because they've put this option on the table and people aren't taking it.
Yeah. No. I mean, and it's Yeah, exciting time for the sport. Again, I think I was really, really impressed with Scott on Saturday. There was a lot of, I had no idea about the cement truck. There was obviously a special guest at the race that needed a ton of Secret Service. And he looked cool as a cucumber.
Scott did, yeah.
Every time I saw him. So, yes.
And he always asked if we needed anything. Every time. You guys need anything?
Yeah. I'm like, mate, you get on with your job.
Yeah.
I'll take a Sprite then.
No, I
VIP and take care of it. So,
can I tell you what we just did?
Yeah, sure.
We got back, and I sent a text to a few groups. We've lived in this house less than 2 years, and we have friends in the village now that we've met through the pub and the local community. We're in a small village, and I said, we're going to go out for some drinks, cat's buying, if you want to come. We just had 15 people in the local pub, all just village people, nothing to do with the sport. All of them tuned in, watched the sport, and just celebrated Cats winning a pub garden in the sun. It was honestly bliss.
That's awesome.
It was so nice.
That's awesome. Cool. Anything else? Are we good to close out?
No, we did.
Well, so we'll backtrack on our normal show. We'll backtrack and cover the races we missed this weekend, because obviously we focused on Texas. We were there. There was some decent racing going on elsewhere. We've got some coming up, but we will catch back up with our usual routine of.
And we'll never do Ford podcasts in 9 days ever again. So
you say that, but we know. I mean, the issue with
that was rough.
The issue with these live shows. So
yeah, live shows were great. Everyone, Mark.
Yeah, that's the last time I drink at a live show. I've got to apologise to those that thought it was a bit much. I woke up with the beer fear. The problem was Carl took me out for beers before it.
We had two beers at lunch, and then I didn't know where you went. Yeah.
So I'm on a bit of a dry streak now up until Roth.
There we go. So thank you guys for listening as well. We'll be back to our normal program show for recapping 70.3 Venice Pro Series race. It's going to happen this weekend, as well as preview for 70.3 St. George. We'll have a stunner of a race.
That's Magnus, Lionel, and Long, isn't it?
Correct. Mm-hmm. So it'll be good. But thank you guys for listening. Thanks for tuning in, and super exciting announcement. I mean, we're going full bore here.
Oh, and we're a little bit too big for the other media agencies, and they don't like us, but that's fine.